Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pleased to take a call on the Game Animal Council bill. The Green Party certainly supports recreational hunting on public conservation land. Many Kiwis, and as Moana Maki said, there are 34,000 hunting permits issued each year by the Department of Conservation. Many Kiwis get immense enjoyment from getting out into the backcountry, from going hunting, because of the physical challenges involved, the stamina required, and actually just being out in the backcountry, being up on those scree slopes, being up on the tussock tops, enjoying the views, waiting for the deer, scanning through binoculars for chamois. It's a long tradition that New Zealand has of free access to conservation land to go hunting. We understand that, and recreational hunting is just as valid a use of our backcountry as tramping, mountain biking, fishing and any other opportunity out there. But we have a big problem with this bill, because it's not about strengthening the Kiwi tradition of going hunting. It's not about boosting hunter numbers and encouraging more young people to go hunting. And the regulatory impact statement made it quite clear that there wasn't any evidence that the current institutional arrangements required change in order to improve participation of people in hunting as a sport. This bill is primarily about catering to a small group who can afford to pay for helicopters and guides to go trophy hunting. And it's about giving them management control and considerable influence over the management of conservation land. The government's SOP, by stripping out of the bill any references to recreational hunting, makes that quite clear. And this bill is likely to make it both more expensive and more bureaucratic for Kiwis to go hunting. And there's no reason for this bill, as other opposition colleagues have noted. There are alternative ways of giving a better voice for the hunting fraternity. It's only going through because it's the payoff to United Future for its support for the government's asset sales legislation, and it's part of the confidence and supply agreement. It doesn't recognise what DOC is doing to improve relationships with the hunting sector. It doesn't recognise improvements to the hunting permit system, the outreach that a lot of the conservation boards are doing, and it's unnecessary, as the regulatory impact statement made very clear. We already have the Wild Animal Control Act. The purpose of that act is to achieve coordination of hunting measures, and it's to provide for the regulation of recreational hunting, commercial hunting and wild animal recovery operations. It was an option that many parties supported, such as the Conservation Authority, of setting up a ministerial advisory committee under the WAC Act to advise the Minister on hunting, and that would have achieved much better integration with the current legislative framework and with the current structure of managing hunting, rather than this standalone bill and standalone agency. We could have also got a greater voice for hunting through additional appointments to the Conservation Authority or to conservation boards. And we had a very interesting submission at Select Committee from the Tongariro Taupo Conservation Board, which talked a lot about how they were working to ensure that hunters' interests were accommodated. If you use existing agencies and existing legislation, you're going to get that cooperation, collaboration amongst the different stakeholders. Setting up the Game Animal Council as a single hunting organisation will not see that collaboration, won't foster it, and it's likely to create significantly more conflict and division in the management of conservation lands. So that's one reason we're opposing it. It's also setting up an unnecessary quango. We already have liaison committees under the Wild Animal Control Act, and they have a significant influence on how hunting's managed on conservation land. You only have to think of the Himalayan Tahr Control Plan Implementation Group, which I was on in a former life. That was dominated by hunters. That was very influential in determining how tahr were managed, and making sure that hunters actually got a real privilege in getting helicopter access to wilderness areas. So there are existing mechanisms like those liaison committees under the Wild Animal Control Act. One of the other reasons we oppose it is the significant costs in establishing the Game Animal Council. And as the regulatory impact statement said, that it was going to have the highest cost in terms of time and resources, as well as being the least aligned to the current wild animal control regime and legislative framework. So the government's proposing to direct at least $100,000 annually and potentially $200,000 to establish the council, and that is a significant cost on the department when the push is for it to be engaged in effective spending, and we know because of the funding cuts that it's very much under financial constraints. And where we've seen these standalone councils established elsewhere, such as in New South Wales, it failed to break even, and the state government there had to subsidise their Game Animal Council to the tune of $3.5 million. So here, if the government doesn't subsidise it to that amount, we are likely to see significant fees imposed on recreational hunters. Originally, the council was to be funded just by levies on the export of trophies. The Select Committee amendments to the bill include a power for the Council to recommend to the Minister how it wants to recover its costs, and then there's a power for the Minister to impose fees and levies. So the Green Party's concern is the combination of those powers plus the stripping out of any reference to recreational hunters through the Minister's SOP is going to mean potentially that the Council will set very high levies to hunt animals in herds of special interest, which only the trophy hunters can afford. And at the moment, DOC doesn't charge to go hunting. It recovers its costs for hunting permits, but that's generally only about $30 a permit. So DOC at the moment supports that Kiwi tradition of going hunting. The Game Animal Council is likely to undermine it because of the need to recover the costs for running in a 11-12 member council, and for its costs in doing research and other work on these herds of special interest. So, Mr Speaker, the State Services Commission, the Treasury, the former Ministry of Economic Development, the former Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, and the former Food Safety Authority all oppose this bill. Government normally takes advice of these agencies. Nationals' rhetoric is all about cutting through red tape and bureaucracy, yet in establishing the standalone agency with significant management powers, it's setting up more red tape and bureaucracy. But our major reason for opposing it is that because it introduces multiple use management on the public conservation estate, and it's at odds with the whole thrust of conservation legislation and DOC's statutory purpose, which is to protect and preserve natural and historic resources and our unique Indigenous biodiversity. And because animals like tahr and deer are being changed by this bill from being recognised as having a problem, or being a problem and having an impact through their browsing on our high country soils, on our Indigenous species, into being seen as more of an asset of value, we are going to see significant conflicts between the Game Animal Council and DOC when it wants to undertake culling and control operations, when it wants to do aerial 1080 operations to control possums. The Game Animal Council, seeking to protect its stakeholder interests, is likely to oppose that. So that whole desire of the Game Animal Council to maximise hunting opportunities will conflict with management of conservation lands and pest control. And that's obvious, Mr Speaker, in the fact that there is nothing in this bill which prohibits the Minister from establishing herds of special interest in our highest category protected areas, like national parks, nature reserves, ecological areas. And that's why there's an SOP in my name to do that. Because if the Minister is genuine about continuing to protect conservation values, there should be a clear commitment that these herds of special interest not be established in national parks, national reserves, as scientific reserves and ecological areas, because of the damage which introduced browsers would cause, or do cause. And there's significant international concern about this bill, and in the ECO submission they attached a letter from the Vice Chair Oceania of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. and that was Penelope Figus, and from the Deputy Vice Chair, Bruce Jeffries, to the Minister of Conservation, which emphasised, and I quote, "There's significant, deep-seated apprehension that the legal and philosophical principles that underpin New Zealand's conservation management systems would be both undermined and compromised if introduced animal management is taken over and driven by the interests of commercial game animal groups and limited numbers of recreational hunters." Mr Speaker, we have a lot more to say about this bill, which we'll do in the committee stages. Thank you.
Thank you. Point of order? Point of order, the Honourable Member Jan Logie.
I seek leave for the vote on the Social Housing Reform, Housing Restructuring and Tenancy Matters Amendment Bill to be taken again.
The vote to be taken again?
Yes.
Is there any objection to that course of action being taken? Sorry? Yeah, you just want to give your vote again?
No, to take the vote again.
Take the whole vote again?
Yeah.
Well, I've been advised that as the matter's finished, it's had its third reading. That's
Point
it.
of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Honourable Member Jan Logie.
I seek leave to have it recorded in the Hansard that the Green Party, Mana Party and Independent MP Brendan Horan wish to vote on the negative on the Social Housing Reform, Housing Restructuring and Tenancy Matters Amendment Bill, which the House was previously dealing with.
Well, yeah, of course I can. I mean, the reality is that the House is a master of its own destiny. The members sought leave, and then it's up to the members to decide what they want to do. Is there any objection to that course of action being taken? There is. Thank you. But it's in Hansard anyway. I call the Honourable Member Nikki Wagner.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I'm very pleased to